Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I never wanted to know this. If you're listening to me now, imagine I'm making a statement in court. Calm, methodical, letting every detail settle in the silence. But the truth is, no matter how composed I sound, my insides are twisted so tight, I feel like I might snap. I see your face in my mind, and I see hers too. The two of you. It plays out over and over. And the worst part is how easily I can recall every second of it. I always believed marriage was permanent. A good man stands by his vows, does his duty, protects his wife. That's what my parents taught me. My father used to say, "A promise is a promise. You don't break it, son. Ever." I took that to heart. Right now, I wish I hadn't. I'd like to say everything started on the morning my phone buzzed on the nightstand. But deep down, I think it started years before. I just wasn't ready to see it. I was an idiot, so wrapped up in my career, my fancy suits, my tidy office in downtown LA, the sound of my own polished footsteps echoing in hallways where the walls were lined with certificates bearing my name, that I forgot to notice the woman drifting away from me. And I knew her better than I'd let myself admit. She used to say, "Don't act like I don't exist," whenever I got lost in my spreadsheets or phone calls. I'd laugh it off. "I do see you, honey. I'm just a little busy." Then I'd bury myself back in the numbers. Now I realize how wrong I was. But the way I found out, the way the truth reached up and slapped me, well, that's a different kind of cruelty. That morning, I heard the phone ring. My phone, sure, but it was lying on the nightstand in a weird position. At first, I thought it was just the alarm. Then I recognized her ringtone. We had that kind of arrangement. Sometimes she'd use my phone when hers was on charge, or pass it to me when an important client called her by mistake. But that morning, something felt off. I reached out and saw a message, right there in plain text. "I like you so much better when you're not here. We always find a way to be together." My first reaction was confusion. The name at the top wasn't hers, but the conversation thread. It was obviously hers. The phone was in her account. Probably she forgot to switch it back. Or maybe that was her final moment of carelessness. Maybe she wanted me to know, in some subconscious way. The message hammered in my brain, each word echoing. Asterisk, we always find a way to be together. Asterisk, my chest felt tight, like a vice. My face was stone, but inside, something folded in on itself. It's that moment when you realize your life is about to change forever. The illusions you built, the security you felt, all gone in the blink of an eye. "Don't act like I don't exist." Her own phrase came back to me. Now, ironically, I couldn't ignore her. Or him. There was no unseeing this text. There was no burying it. I stood there, phone in hand, the morning light creeping through the blinds. It was supposed to be a normal workday. I had an early meeting with a major client. She was supposed to be out shopping, then heading to her job. But as I read that message, I knew none of it mattered anymore. A puzzle piece clicked into place. All the late returns home, the lingering looks at her phone, the extra caution with her messages. Of course, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was just joking around. Maybe it was a mistaken text to a friend. But no, the tone was too intimate, too raw. I closed the message, opened the chat thread, and there it was. All the sappy, flirty banter, half-coded references to nights in random hotels. Deletions in the chain, like she'd tried to hide the juiciest parts, but not thoroughly enough. She must have grown complacent, or maybe my phone linked to her account automatically. You know that moment in movies when the protagonist says everything grows quiet, and all they can hear is their own heartbeat. That's exactly how it felt. A silent vacuum. A single pulse in my ears. Asterisk thump, thump asterisk. Then I heard the shower. She was still at home, in the bathroom. Steam was drifting from under the door. If this were an official courtroom transcript, I'd read these lines into evidence. Exhibit A. The text message. Exhibit B. My wife in the shower. My dear, sweet wife. A woman with blonde hair that always smelled of lavender. The same woman who once whispered in my ear, "I'll love you until the day I die." I tried to recall her face from our early years, the way she'd look at me when I'd come home from long office hours. At some point, that look changed. I never wanted to know exactly why. Now I do. I locked the phone, placed it face down on the nightstand, and walked out of the bedroom. I felt a wave of something. Anger, betrayal, confusion. But oddly, an unnatural calm took hold of me too, like I was watching from outside my body. The floor felt cold beneath my bare feet as I made my way to the living room. She must have heard me. The water shut off. A few minutes later, she emerged, wrapped in a towel, hair wet and shining. She looked at me, no expression. She didn't even bother to pretend this was a normal day. Her eyes flicked to the phone on the nightstand, but then came back to me. "I never meant for you to see that," she said, so calmly it almost made me laugh. That was the first time my black humor surfaced. I felt a weird, twisted smile on my lips, even though there was no real joy in it. "Oh, but you said, don't act like I don't exist, remember? Looks like you finally have my undivided attention." She tried to say something, maybe an excuse or a denial, but I cut her off with a short wave of my hand. "Save it. If you value your life, you'll accept how things are and not interfere with what I'm about to do." Those words, if you value your life, were so out of character for me. I'm not a violent person. I've never struck her, never threatened her physically. But in that moment, they felt right. It was a boundary I set, an invisible line. Do not lie to me anymore. Do not pretend. She went silent. Didn't fight back, didn't even flinch. That's what hurt the most. Her utter indifference. She just let me walk out. I left the house, took the car, and drove with no destination in mind. I found a coffee place, parked, and just sat there. My head was still pounding with that vacuum-like hush. My phone buzzed in my pocket, messages from my clients, from my colleagues. I ignored them. Memories rushed in. The time she told me she wanted more from me. More romance, more presence, more everything. I'd nod, promise to be better. Then I'd get lost in my numbers again. I can't say I was blindsided by her betrayal, but the finality of it stunned me. Eventually, I pulled myself together enough to check the clock. If I wasn't going to show up for my meeting, I needed at least to send an excuse. So I typed out a short, curt message. "Family emergency. Reschedule." I drank my coffee. Black. No sugar. It tasted bitter, and ironically, that was perfect for my mood. Then, as if guided by some masochistic impulse, I opened her chat thread again. I scrolled. The words leaped out at me. "Meet me at the usual place. I can't wait to see you. You make me feel alive." And some photos. Nothing too graphic, but enough to make my heart feel like it was being crushed in a vice. That's how I discovered the address. A small boutique hotel in Koreatown. They'd been sneaking off there for weeks, maybe months. Suddenly I had a location, a clear mental image. The squeak of cheap mattresses, low-watt bulbs flickering in old lamps. My wife's face, shining with an excitement I hadn't seen in years. I sat in that coffee shop, letting the minutes pass, letting the bitterness soak in. My phone rang. I saw her name on the screen. I declined the call. She sent a text. "We need to talk. Just us." My response was simple. We already did. I started the engine and drove to my office. Work was the only place where I'd felt in control for the last decade. My assistant looked surprised to see me, especially after my abrupt cancellation, but I told her quietly that something came up, that I'd only be around for an hour or so. She didn't pry, just nodded with concerned eyes. Inside my private office, I stood before the big window overlooking downtown. The city sprawled beneath me, All those cars and buildings, all that hustle. It usually made me feel powerful, like a king surveying his domain. But at that moment, I felt smaller than ever. I recalled the vow. I'll provide for you. I'll make you proud. Her old words from our wedding day drifted into my mind. You're my one and only. Then I saw that phone screen again, the evidence of her betrayal. I exhaled. If she wanted out, she should have told me. We could have handled it like adults, but she was too cowardly or too invested in the thrill of sneaking around. Asterisk, we always find a way to be together. Asterisk, right then, I decided I would confront him. This man, her lover, had a name, or at least a nickname, from the chat. Later, I'd find out it stood for Eric, an IT freelancer. The kind of guy who probably boasted about working from anywhere, living the free life, playing guitar on the weekends. She used to dream of that free spirit. Now she'd found it. I called in a favor from an old acquaintance, someone who was good at finding details quickly. Within a few hours, I had a better sense of who E was, where he lived, what he did for a living. I'd never stooped to these methods before, but heartbreak can push a man to extremes. That evening, I went home. She was in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa, still wearing her work clothes. Pencil skirt, blouse unbuttoned at the collar, her hair brushed into soft waves. She looked up at me, searching my eyes for something. But I gave her nothing. We have to talk, she said softly. I stared at her. Now you want me to see you. Great timing. She pressed her lips together. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Yeah, I'll bet. I dropped my briefcase by the door, stepped closer, and I spoke quietly. You told me once, don't shut me out. Remember, I'm wide open now, so talk. She swallowed, tears shining in her eyes. But she held them back. I was lonely. You were gone all the time, physically, emotionally. And Eric, he paid attention to me. I found myself letting out a humorless laugh. Eric, your own personal motivational speaker. Her eyes flashed. He's not just that. I raised a brow. Oh, so he's a true love. A soulmate, maybe. She flinched, glancing away. Silence. Then she said, I don't know. And that cut deeper than any direct insult could. She didn't know if she still loved me, or if she ever did, or if she loved him. She just knew she wanted more than what I gave her. I stepped away, heading toward the kitchen, needing distance. The conversation felt suffocating. She followed, wearing that faint perfume I recognized as the scent I'd bought her for our anniversary. A cruel irony. She said, Michael, we can fix this if we try. Fix. I repeated, turning to face her. You mean, fix ***, or fix your fling so it doesn't get discovered next time. Her cheeks colored. That's not fair. I pulled up the phone, scrolling to that message. Fair. Let me refresh your memory. You make me feel alive. I wish I could share your bed every night. That ring a bell, or should I read the rest? She stared at the floor. I continued, voice low. I recall you saying, I'm so proud of you. You never give up. I forced a sardonic grin. I guess you gave up for both of us. She whispered, I never wanted to hurt you. I shook my head and gave her a tight smile. But here I am, bleeding out on the inside. My voice dropped to a near growl. And you stand there with your white towel in the morning, acting like you don't owe me a single tear. She swallowed hard. Do you want me to leave? I paused. That question hung between us, an echo of the life we'd built. Did I want her to leave? The truth was, I wanted her to vanish from my mind, from my heart, from all the illusions I ever had about marriage. But part of me needed some kind of retribution. Maybe a clean break, maybe something more. So I said, don't pack your bags yet. I'm not done. She looked confused. Then I turned around, ended the conversation by simply walking away. I locked myself in the guest bedroom for the night. She didn't knock. I barely slept. The next day, I arranged for someone to watch that motel. I paid them to keep an eye on who came and went. A day later, I had what I needed: photographic evidence of them meeting. No illusions, no second guessing. But let me pull back for a moment, because this is where the show don't tell hits hardest. I sat in my car outside that Koreatown motel in the middle of the afternoon. It was a rundown place, a flickering neon sign, battered doors leading to cheap rooms. The sun beat down, turning the asphalt into a shimmering sea. Then I saw her, my wife of more than a decade, pull into the lot, stepping out in a flowery sundress, her posture tense, glancing around. Moments later, he appeared. Average height, lean build, short dark hair, a casual t-shirt, and a grin so wide you'd think he'd just won the lottery. He leaned in close, whispered something that made her smile in that way. You know, that secret asterisk kind of smile. She touched his arm, and they went inside. I waited in the car for 25 minutes. I told myself I needed to see this through, needed the truth hammered into my skull. Then I got out and walked up the metal stairs to the second floor. It creaked under my feet. My heart pounded. I had a feeling this was wrong, like I shouldn't be there. But I had to see. The door was slightly ajar, or maybe I imagined that. I peeked in. They were in the middle of it. She was leaning against the wall, her fingers tangled in his hair, their bodies close, clothes askew. The smell of stale air conditioning and cheap perfume rolled out. For a second, my mind went blank. It was all shadows and shapes. The hush of their breath, her low moan. I stepped back, wanting to vomit. My entire body shook. I felt my nails biting into my palms. 1,000 thoughts raced through my head, but one overshadowed all. Asterisk, that's my wife. Asterisk, I almost burst in, demanded they face me. But something stopped me. Maybe I was paralyzed by shock. Or maybe a cold, calculating side of me wanted a different kind of confrontation. I retreated, carefully, quietly, down the hall, back to the parking lot. My face felt like stone again. No tears, no outward reaction. Just a hollowness so deep it seemed infinite. I sat in the car, numb. A black wave of fury threatened to consume me, but I forced a dark little laugh under my breath. Asterisk, this is who you are now, Michael. A man watching his wife cheat, not even interrupting. Asterisk, I waited until they emerged. She was straightening her dress, her hair a mess. He was smiling, tucking in his shirt. They exchanged a quick kiss, parted ways. She hurried to her car, presumably heading back to normal life. I whispered to myself, you said once, we'll always be honest with each other. How's that working out for you? I followed him. This Eric, at a distance. He drove a battered old sedan, weaving through traffic with that casual, carefree style. Eventually, he pulled into a parking structure next to a shared office building downtown. I parked a few levels down. By that point, I was shaking with adrenaline. I didn't want to approach him yet. I needed a plan. So I turned on the ignition, swallowed my fury, and drove away. That night, I confronted her again. She was in the bedroom, folding laundry. My laundry, ironically. The normal domestic routine. As though she hadn't been pressed up against that man earlier. She heard me come in. She looked up, eyes searching. You saw us. I nodded, my jaw tense. Yes, that's the second time I've seen you together. First in the messages, now in person. Her lips trembled. I'm sorry. Don't say you're sorry. Say something real. She dropped the shirt she was folding. I don't know if I can be what you need anymore. A short laugh escaped me, harsh and mirthless. I think we've both established that, haven't we? I stepped closer, letting the rage simmer just beneath the surface. You know what's funny? You once told me, if you ever break my trust, I'll never forgive you. And here we are. She was silent. I pointed at the pile of laundry, still half folded. That's me, right there. Neat, controlled, trying to keep everything in order. And you You tear it all apart. She sank onto the bed. Tears began to spill over, but she wiped them quickly. I felt so alone, and Eric made me feel seen. How ironic that you needed to be seen in some dingy motel. Good job. That black humor was rising again. It was vicious, bitter. Part of me wanted to devour her with it, watch her crumble. But another part, the old me, wanted to hold her, comfort her, fix the pieces. I closed my eyes and took a breath. Let's cut to the chase. You've made your choice, and it isn't me. So let's end this charade. She looked up, tears on her cheeks. Are you divorcing me? I gave her a look that must have been pitiless. Oh, we'll get there. But not before I settle a few scores. She frowned. I never wanted to hurt you. Never. Funny you keep saying that, I interrupted. But you did it anyway. And now you're going to live with the consequences. I left the room and slammed the door, feeling the surge of adrenaline that made my hands shake. My mind was racing, formulating a plan for how I'd secure my assets, protect my finances, stuff that felt like battlefield maneuvers. Perhaps that was the only thing I could control. The business, the money, the practicalities. In the following weeks, I dove into damage control. I restructured certain accounts, pulled my personal finances from joint statements, consulted a lawyer, discreetly, to get a sense of my rights. My wife, in the meantime, seemed caught between guilt and defiance. Some days, she'd try to apologize, maybe even suggest therapy. On others, she'd vanish for hours, presumably to see him. I let her. Coldness filled our home. Meals were eaten in silence. Sometimes, I'd watch her from across the table, remembering all the laughter we once shared, the playful teasing. Now, she rarely looked me in the eyes. She was like a ghost, drifting through the rooms, going through motions. I kept thinking of that phrase she used so often in our early days. Don't you dare ignore me. Now, ignoring her was a small act of revenge. If she needed attention so badly, she'd get none from me. But revenge has a way of feeding on itself. One afternoon, I realized I hadn't actually confronted him yet. Why was that? Fear, pride. Maybe I wanted to corner him in private, away from her eyes. Or maybe I wanted him to squirm. So I decided to pay him a visit. I found his address, an apartment in a decent part of town, not too fancy but comfortable. That evening, I drove up to the building, sat in my car, and waited until the door to the complex opened. Someone stepped out, so I slipped in before it locked again. I climbed the stairs, found his door, and knocked. He answered after a moment, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair slightly damp from a shower. He looked at me, frowned. Can I help you? I forced a polite smile. Eric Hines. He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. Yeah. I exhaled. I think you know who I am. He paused. Then recognition lit up his eyes. His posture tensed. Listen, man, this isn't how I wanted. I raised a hand to silence him. We're not going to have a brawl in the hallway, if that's what you're worried about. He cleared his throat. Do you want to come in? I glanced past his shoulder into a modest living room, cluttered with cables, a half-eaten bag of chips on the coffee table, some monitors scattered around. Typical freelancer chaos. Sure, I said. He let me in, closed the door, stood there with an awkward air, like a teenager caught stealing cigarettes. Look, I didn't intend to break up a marriage. I gave a curt laugh. Sure you didn't. He rubbed the back of his neck. Okay, maybe I did. I mean, she told me you two were drifting apart, that you didn't care anymore. I studied him, this man who had disrupted my entire life. He was neither imposing nor pathetic. Just ordinary. And that stung the worst. I'd built up this mental image of a dark, seductive intruder. But he was simply a guy with a half-eaten taco on his kitchen counter. And that gave you permission to do what? I asked quietly. Sneak around behind my back. Sleep with my wife. He winced. I'm sorry. She said she was miserable, and we just clicked. The anger in my belly twisted. Clicked. That's a nice, shallow way of putting it. He swallowed. I'd like to say if I'd known how badly it would end, I wouldn't have started it. But I can't promise that. I glared at him, a storm raging inside me. You know what she told me once? I love how you make me feel safe. Now if she claims you make her feel seen. Safety, seen. Maybe next month, she'll need something else. He opened his mouth, then closed it. No answer. I walked around his living room, glancing at the random gadgets, the sloppy arrangement of wires and tech gear. This is your domain, I guess, where you conjure illusions about how life should be, freed from responsibilities, freed from real commitment. He frowned. That's not entirely fair. I shrugged. Life isn't fair. I turned to him, letting my voice drop. But you took something from me. And there's a price for that. He paled. Are you threatening me? My lips curled into a faint, bitter smirk. I'm not physically violent, but let's just say I know how to ruin someone in more civilized ways. If you have a client base, if you have future projects, I can make them evaporate. That's my specialty, after all, finding vulnerabilities. His eyes darted anxiously. You can't do that. I can. But whether or not I will, that depends on how this conversation ends. He swallowed. What do you want? I stared at him a moment, feeling my nails dig into my palms again. I wanted to see him squirm, to see fear in his eyes. Then I realized, was that who I was now? A man so broken I'd stoop to blackmail. I took a slow breath. All I want is for you to realize that you've destroyed something real. And you did it like a child, chasing a new toy without a second thought. Well, now you get to handle the fallout. He took a step back, crossing his arms. She's not a toy. I care about her. Sure you do, I said bitterly. At least until the next sparkly thing comes along. You'll move on, eventually. Then she'll be alone, and you'll pretend you were never part of this. He lowered his gaze, perhaps stung by the truth. I turned for the door. Consider yourself warned. If you do anything else to make this worse, I'll come back. He started to say something, but I left, shutting the door hard behind me. In the hallway, I felt a strange thrill. It was a surge of power, of petty satisfaction. But under it was a nauseating guilt. Is this how I want to live? I went home to find my wife in the living room again, pacing. She glanced at me, anxious. Where were you? I shrugged, took off my jacket, loosened my tie. Confronting your Eric. Her eyes widened. You? Did what? I met her gaze. Don't worry, I didn't hurt him. I'm not that kind of monster. She let out a breath. Michael, what are you trying to do? I stared at her, my jaw tight. You once told me I need to fight for what I want. And guess what? I'm fighting for my dignity. And this is how it looks. She stepped closer. Please, just stop. Don't make this uglier than it already is. I laughed, the sound hollow. It's already ugly. She dropped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I don't know what to do. I sank into the armchair across from her, arms crossed. You could start by admitting you messed up. She looked up, tears glistening. I messed up. And I'm sorry. Silence. I let those words hang there, but they felt too little, too late. I recalled the first time she ever apologized to me, years ago, for something trivial. Burning dinner, I think. We laughed about it then. Now, no laughter. Finally, I said, good. Now pack your things. I'm done. Her breath caught. Where will I go? I shrugged coldly. Go to him. If he truly cares, he'll open his door, or get a hotel. Doesn't matter to me. She swallowed, eyes red. Michael, please. I shook my head. It's over. And that's how I enforced the final boundary. She didn't protest much after that. Just cried quietly, gathering some clothes into a suitcase. There was a numbness in the air, like the hush after a storm, but the clouds were still heavy. She slept in the guest room for a few nights, but then, eventually, she did leave. No drawn-out goodbyes, no last-minute kisses, just the faint sound of wheels rolling over the threshold as she lugged her suitcase out the front door. If you're listening to this, I imagine you're expecting some grand meltdown, some screaming match. But that's the thing. Not all pain is loud. Sometimes it's a cold, suffocating presence that seeps into your bones. I felt that every night as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Days turned into weeks. I visited my lawyer, initiated divorce proceedings. She hired her own lawyer. We had bland meetings about asset division. I might have come off as heartless, but truthfully, I was just dead inside. She glanced at me across the table, as if to say, "Please, let's make this easier." But I refused. In the meantime, my business thrived. Odd how tragedy can sharpen a man's focus. I poured myself into my work, closed deals, made more money, let the success I once craved define me fully. People said, "You look different, more driven, more intense." I guess that's what happens when you have nothing left to lose. She used to say, "One day, you'll be a big success, and I'll be so proud." That phrase echoed in my head. Part of me wanted to rub it in her face. Asterisk, look at me now. Sweetheart, your dream come true. Asterisk, every so often, I'd hear about her from mutual friends, how she was trying to get her life together. One day, I found out Eric had broken things off. Turned out he was as restless as I suspected, moving on to new opportunities, maybe a woman in his co-working space, or maybe a spiritual journey across the country. Who knows? All I knew was that she was alone. I pictured her in some sublet apartment, perched on a second-hand couch. Did I feel sorry for her? Maybe a flicker. But mostly, I felt nothing. And that emptiness was its own victory. I remember the last time I saw her in person. We had to finalize some paperwork, sign a few last forms, and she appeared at my office reception. She wore a conservative dress, her hair neat, makeup understated. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, drained. We locked eyes. I gestured for her to follow me into a private conference room. We sat across the table, the same table where I'd negotiated countless deals. I passed her the documents, pointed to where she needed to sign. She stared at the papers, her fingers trembling. "So this is it. Looks that way." She scribbled her signature, exhaled. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you hate me?" I paused, pen in hand. My eyes drifted across her face, those blue eyes that once held such warmth. I thought back to that phone message, that motel, that moment I saw them entwined. And I said, with quiet finality, "I'm done feeling anything for you." She nodded, tears brimming, but she managed to keep them at bay. There were no more words. She slid the documents back, stood, and walked out. I watched her go, and part of me wondered if there might be a piece of my soul trailing behind her. But if so, it was a piece I no longer wanted. I had the documents couriered to my lawyer. By the next morning, the process was essentially complete. Single again. Empty again. I expected to feel freedom or relief. Instead, I felt a calm, a strange sense of finality, like finishing a book with a tragic ending. Maybe I should have cried or screamed, but that wasn't me. I just poured another cup of coffee, stared out at the LA skyline, and thought, asterisk, this is how it ends. Asterisk now, to whomever is reading or hearing this, you might be tempted to think I'm the victim, or maybe the villain, someone who refused to see his wife's emotional needs, then turned cold and exacted revenge. But I'm not asking you to judge me. I'm telling you how it happened, because that's what you do when you make a statement in court. You lay it out, piece by piece, and let the evidence speak. What I know is that I lost her long before I read that message. She was drifting, starving for attention, for excitement, while I was busy building a fortress of financial success, oblivious to the cracks in our foundation. The affair was just the final blow. And in the end, I won, if you can call it that. I got everything I'd worked for. Money, status, recognition. I even got a twisted sort of triumph over her. I left her with nothing but regret, and that lonely pride she used to cling to. She tried to beat me to the exit, but found herself standing outside in the cold. Sometimes, victory is just another brand of emptiness. But hey, if you ask her, she might say the same. We both paid for it in our own ways. So as I sit here, thinking about it all, do I regret anything? Sure. I regret not listening to her, not seeing her unravel. But regrets don't change the outcome. The marriage is gone. The illusions are gone. And ironically, that might be the one real piece of honesty we've ever shared. Don't act like I don't exist, she used to say. If I could speak to her one last time, maybe I'd say, no, I see you just fine. And now you'll see what it's like to exist without me. I told her once, if she valued her life, she'd accept things as they are and not interfere. I wasn't threatening her physically. I was drawing a line. From this point onward, I'm out of your reach, and you're out of mine. So here we are. That's the story. I never wanted to know any of it. But now, I know it all too well. I know the look in her eyes when she's lying, the shape of her shoulders when she's naked in some stranger's arms, the slow calm of my own rage as it seeps through my veins. I know how betrayal tastes. Bitter, yes, but not as bitter as realizing I let it happen. If you're still waiting for the moment I break down and sob, you'll be disappointed. Sometimes a man's tears run too deep for his eyes to reach. My pain just settled inside my chest, locked behind a heavy door, and maybe it'll stay there until the day I die. And that, my friend, is where I'll leave you. Right at the point of understanding that not every wound bleeds outward. Some remain invisible, a slow corrosive drip that gnaws at you from the inside. And that's life, isn't it? People see the surface, not the roiling storm beneath. So if you ask me, now you know how she feels. My answer is yes, I do. I know how we both feel. And it's not something I'd wish on anyone. But you want the truth. Sometimes, pain is all that's left to remind you that you once believed in love. So let this stand as the final word. I've said my piece. You've heard it. That's all there is.